أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode on Best of Both Worlds, a show where we like to discuss contemporary youth issues which face all of our daily lives, and we like to discuss these issues by giving practical examples on how to conquer such problems that we may face. Today, the differences in opinion amongst our communities are on the rise, and especially within the youth. This may be down to various factors, for example, our friends, the social media that we view on a daily basis, our family and our family traditions which have been passed on. We may follow some opinions which originated back 20-30 years ago and are still being continued. As this gap and these differences widens, it is important to discuss some of these factors and how they can have an effect on our daily lives, and whether these differences are still in line with our religion. We will therefore look to tackle in today's episode the question of how can we deal with the differences in our communities. This topic is quite broad, but we will mainly be focusing on the Shia community and some of the challenges which we face amongst our youth inside our community. Due to the differences of opinions we will have, we must all make sure that we are still striving to follow our religion. This way it has been laid out, the way it has been laid out to us in the Quran. This show today will establish and we will look at how to deal with whether the opinions that are out there are still within the Quran that we are following, or are we slightly diverting, and making sure that we are staying on the Sirat al-Mustaqim at all times. If we are influenced by others, how do we get out of that to make sure that we are going back home doing our own research and making sure what we are researching is actually goes back to our Sunnah from the Prophet and our Imams. I'd like to start this topic by first discussing the idea of mujtahid, a person who is accepted to authorize Islamic law. I'd like to welcome Sayyid Zafar Abbas, our honorable guest. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Sayyid, we have grand ayatollahs amongst us, we follow daily, and we refer to them as mujtahids. Now, even they differ from opinions. So when our youth have opinions, even they having opinions, which one of these opinions do we choose, and why do we need to follow a mujtahid?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi tayyibin at-tahirin, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I think this topic is a very important topic. It's one that affects all of our lives, and it's one that everyone says they need answers on. So first of all, regarding mujtahideen, Maraj Ozam, the basic definition, mujtahid comes from juhud in Arabic, which means to struggle or to strive. So mujtahid is a person who struggles in order to find out the Islamic law. From a technical istilahi point of view, a mujtahid is a person who has the ability to extrapolate the laws of the religion from the text, so from the Quran and the ahadith of the Prophet and Aimma alayhi salam. Now, when it comes to opinions, we recognize in all areas of life that whereas everybody can have opinions, not everybody's opinion has the same value, and this is a obvious thing. Why? Because if there's somebody who is a doctor and they have an opinion about whether this person should have surgery or not, compared to a person who's not a doctor, clearly the person who is a doctor will have his opinion would have more weight regarding surgery than my opinion, who has no expertise in the medical field, for example. Similarly, if it's a legal matter, a lawyer's opinion will be more important in that field, if it's a building structural matter, engineer's opinion, so on and so forth. So we recognize that expert opinion on a particular issue, particular area, is worth more and will be more considerable compared to opinion of a person who is not knowledgeable in that field. And when it comes to the religion, when it comes to the deen, that is also the case. That a person who has the capability to extrapolate the laws from Quran and Hadith of Ahlul Bayt ﷺ will be, his opinion would be considered more worthy than the opinion of anybody else.
Absolutely.
So that is obviously one area. Second area, regarding the following of a mujtahid, the books of fiqh mention that the obligation on a person is one of three. So the first obligation is for a person to be a mujtahid themselves, to have the ability to extrapolate the laws so that they can follow the laws of Quran and Hadith. Second option is a person who cannot be a mujtahid, or is not capable of being a mujtahid, or doesn't have the time to be a mujtahid, can follow a mujtahid in the matters of furu'id.
Is there a certain amount of years you have to do to become one?
Right. So in terms of mujtahid, it's not a degree in the sense that we might consider like BA or bachelor's, master's, PhD kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a mujtahid is a person who reaches that capability, and that is obviously depends on the aptitude of each individual. For every person it takes a different amount of time. It depends how early they start, so on and so forth, what environment they're in, what teachers they have, and also tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we find that, for example, many mujtahids become mujtahid when they're very young, because they start studying at an early age, and there's tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they get bestowed with this capability and ability to get the Islamic laws. So in this regard, obviously, either a person becomes a mujtahid, or they follow a mujtahid, or they do ihtiyat, which means that you look at all the views of all the mujtahids, and then you follow the strictest opinion out of all of them as a matter of precaution. So for most people, obviously, being a mujtahid is not an option, and doing ihtiyat is very difficult, so we're left with following a mujtahid. Now, mujtahid themselves have difference of opinion. Yes. However, we have to be clear, and we have to emphasize that we should be careful not to exaggerate the differences of opinion. 95% of the rules mentioned by all the mujtahids are the same. Okay, the level of difference is very minor and little. Yes, it does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's not. We shouldn't magnify it for more than what it is. So that's one point. The 95% of the matters that are discussed in the books of fiqh are agreed upon by most of the mujtahideen.
What are some of the differences?
Right. So we have differences of opinion based on things. So for example, in School of Ahlul Bayt our first primary source, of course, is the Holy Quran, and then a hadith from the Prophet and from the Aimma alayhi salam. So wherever there's something that's clearly been mentioned in the Holy Quran, or clearly been mentioned by one of the Ma'sumin alayhi salam, there's no room for difference. Okay, because it's clearly, openly, stated in either one of the texts. So all the fatwa are in accordance with that matter. Where there's differences is, for example, where there are multiple ahadith about a particular topic, or there's no hadith, for example, about a particular area or a particular issue. And then how do you deal with those different? This is where ijtihad, or the process of extrapolating law, comes into place. Okay. For example, or there is a hadith, but it's open to interpretation. So for example, The hadith regarding moon sighting, which is a favorite topic which creates issues amongst people. So is there a hadith? Yes, there's a hadith. Hadith is what? Hadith is sumu li ru'yatihi. Fast when you see it, see the moon. Okay? So this is a hadith, it's very clear. Fast when you see the moon. Okay? But question, how do you see the moon? Okay? So you obviously can see it with your eyes. Okay? But I need glasses. So I have a additional aid to see the moon, which you don't have, right? So is that the same? Is you seeing it with your eyes and me seeing it with my glasses the same? Or is there a difference? So here Mujtahid will reply that yes, it's the same or it's not.
Ramadan's coming and I know we're going to have this problem soon.
Okay. Or for example, number 2, in the time of the Prophet, they didn't have telescopes, for example. Let's say, for example, I'm not saying whether they did or not, but let's say, for example, they didn't have telescopes. And now we have telescopes, with which there's times where you can see the moon with a telescope, but you can't see it without the telescope, right? So is it permissible to see the moon with the telescope? Would that be sufficient? Or do you have to see it with your own eyes and without the telescope? Okay, so here Mujtahid will reply that sumu li ru'yatihi would include telescope or not. Okay. Third matter, I live in UK and we didn't see the moon in UK, but we saw the moon in Morocco, or we saw it in South Africa, or we saw it in, I don't know, in Pakistan, or we saw it in Iran. Is it sufficient for that moon which we saw there to be acceptable in UK or not? Or does it have to be seen in UK? Again, Mujtahid will extrapolate that. Sumu li ru'yatihi means that when you see the moon here or there or everywhere, so on and so forth. So this one hadith, okay, we got one hadith, and all the Mujtahideen are using that one hadith in order to explain the matter, but they're giving different opinions because of the interpretations that are available in that hadith. Now if I'm doing precaution, I'm doing ihtiyat, and I have to take the strictest opinion. That for example, if one mujtahid says you can follow a moon in Morocco or Iran or Pakistan, and another mujtahid says no, you have to follow in UK, so then I have to go with the stricter opinion, which is I have to see the moon myself personally, or see it in my own country, and not rely on other. Why? Because in the past, if for example you saw the moon in a different country, by the time that person came and told you that the moon was sighted, it's already the next day. We didn't have instant communication. So that is another matter of whether it's acceptable to follow another country or not. Okay. And by the way, this particular issue, obviously, because it's not just affecting us, it's affecting all Muslims. So these debates are existent within other schools of thought as well. The point I wanted to raise, obviously we use this example of moon sighting, which is a common one. Like you said, Ramadan is coming and all these things are gonna come up again. Even after all of that, so for example, we have Mujtahid, Maraj Ozam, 4 of them in Najaf, for example, about 10 big ones in Iran,
there's some leeways
and countless other mujtahideen in other, on the lower levels. Despite all of these differences that they have amongst themselves about these matters, right? In public, with themselves, they have good relations. They don't swear at each other, aliyadu billah. They don't label each other. They don't say you are wrong and I'm right and you have to follow me and everybody else is wrong. No. They say that this person, who's a mujtahid, used the same sources, same texts as we did, in order to come up with this conclusion. This person, who's also mujtahid, used the same sources, came up with a different conclusion. Okay? And it's not as though the mujtahid came up with this conclusion and then he just stopped and he just published it. No. When a mujtahid comes up with a conclusion, he comes and there's other mujtahideen in the dars, in the class, where he mentions that this is my research, and they challenge him. They say that you came up with this conclusion based on this hadith, okay, but what about all of these other alternatives that we could have come up with? And then one by one he replies to those challenges and says, no, I don't agree. that this could be a conclusion because of this, and I don't agree it could be this, and I don't agree it could be this, and this is why I believe this is the correct conclusion, right? So when it's gone through that rigorous process, only after that is when it's published. Okay, so it is a very rigorous process, not just that I came up with an opinion based on a hadith and I published it and that's it. No, it's a rigorous process that it goes through, and once it's gone through that process, that is when it is published into what. So this is one that the mujtahid respects the other mujtahid even after having difference of opinion.
And we should try instilling
so now,
the same
ahsan. So now if I'm a follower of mujtahid X and you're a follower of mujtahid Y, right? Just like mujtahid X and mujtahid Y have good relations with each other, why is it that follower of mujtahid X and follower of mujtahid Y are swearing at each other, alayadu billah, they're saying you are this, you are that, giving them labels, saying this, spreading messages on social media, labeling them, calling them X, Y, Z labels. You know all of the labels better than me. I don't want to advertise those labels. This is against the spirit of all of our mujtahideen. They don't do this. They respect, they are tolerant of other people's opinions. They don't label the person who has a different opinion to them just because they have a different opinion. Okay? They try to understand why that person has that opinion. They say, look, this is our opinion, that is their opinion, right? But we're not labeling, we're not saying this person is this because they have a different opinion. That is not acceptable. Right? And that is not so we have to build that level of tolerance that they have at the highest levels in our own societies, our own communities as well, dealing with that kind of difference, because they're going to be different, right? And it could be about trivial things, like for example, you like pizza, right? And you like a particular topping on your pizza, I like a different topping on my pizza. That's fine, right? I'm not going to label you as a X, Y, Z because of, we have a difference of opinion on a particular issue, right? So this is the key thing. Okay. Now there are some differences.
Sometimes opinions can also be dangerous. We'll go on to that later.
So we'll come to that in a bit. Yes.
Okay. So that's fine. We've discussed so far the importance of mujtahids. However, when I talk to youth in many of our meetings at mosques, in events, at universities, at work, some actually say, the question always comes up, is it actually important for us to follow a mujtahid? When we believe, us Shias, we believe in one God, we follow the holy prophets, and we follow our imams who have been passed down by the prophets. We follow their teachings and we have the Quran. Is it necessary for us to now follow mujtahids when we have the imam of our time also present?
Look, if somebody has access to Imam Ajjallahu Ta'ala Faraju Sharif, and wherever they have an issue and they can get the answer from the Imam, Bismillah, no problem. You don't need to follow anyone, you have the Imam. Okay. The reason why we're following mujtahids in the ghaibat of Imam ﷺ is because we don't have direct access to the Imam. If I have a problem, if I have an issue, if I have a question, I cannot go to the Imam and ask. Right? Okay. And this system of following somebody in place of the Imam is set up during the time of the Imams. Okay, Imam Amirul Mu'minin sends Malik Ashtar to Egypt, and he says to him, you are my representative. Whatever you say to those people, you order them, it's the same as me doing it. Okay, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam does it, Imam Rida alayhi salam. After Imam Rida alayhi salam, every single Imam has companions whom he tells the people that you have to follow this person, and whatever reply he gives you is the same as my reply. Then Imam alayhi salam and 4 representatives during Ghaibat al-Sughra. All of this is a process, right? In order to make us used to following people when we don't have access to the Imam alayhi salam. Okay? So this is all a rational, aqli basis.
We have youth out there who actually do have this problem of why should we?
Right. So this is a rational aqli thing that wherever we consult, whenever we have any professional matter, we go and consult the experts. And so, similarly with the religion, it's the same thing. We have to go and consult the experts, okay? Now, if you want to go, like for example, some people have this issue, why should we only follow one? You follow one because it's convenient for you and for me, right? If I follow one, I read one person's rulings and I follow them, and that's it. That's discharging my obligation. If I want to follow more than one, that means I have to read that same rule 10 times. 5 times, 10 times, referring to all the other mujtahideen, and then I have to make a decision about what I want to follow, and that's fine. If somebody wants to do that, that's fine, but it's making life more difficult for myself.
So
right?
it's fine to pick and choose which maraja you'd like to follow,
right?
But it's not the most convenient way of going about.
Number one is that if you pick and choose, then you have to pick the strongest or the harshest opinion.
You might just want to pick what's favorable to you, though.
Right. So then, if I'm going to pick what's favorable to me, that's not following them. That's following myself. Right? If I'm going to pick what is more favorable to me, then that is picking what I want to believe in or what I want to do. Whereas in reality, I need to try and find out in the ghaibat of Imam, what is the opinion which is closest to what the Imam wants from me. Right? In the time of the Imam, I know 100% that this is what the Imam wants from me. In the time of ghaibat, I can't know because I have no access to Imam. So I have to go for the opinion which is closest to knowing what the Imam wants from me, which is why we have the concept of the most knowledgeable, what is called A'lam. Okay. Now, we don't want to go into all the too much detail about that, inshallah, some other time. But what we wanted to come to is that these are differences of opinion when it comes to the existing framework that we already have. Okay, so if a mujtahid, for example, comes and says that instead of 3 rakats of Maghrib you have to pray 4 rakats, we have to reject that. Okay? Because this is the established sunnah of the Holy Prophet of Islam regarding how many rakats of prayers you have to pray, regarding fasting in the holy month of Ramadan from Fajr until Maghrib, regarding going to Hajj in Mecca in the particular days. If somebody comes out, turns around and said, let's go for Hajj in Rajab, for example, let's go for Hajj in Sha'ban, we have to reject that. Why? Because this is against the established sunnah of the Holy Prophet Islam and Ayyimah alayhi salam. Okay? So we have an existing framework, and within that framework, if there is differences of opinion, that's fine. Okay? So that is one. Number 2 is that when it comes to beliefs, our aqeedah, our beliefs, our theology, these beliefs and this theology is based on the Quran, hadith of Ayyimah alayhi salatu salam, the Prophet and Ayyimah alayhi salam. And in this matter, each individual, unlike matters of fiqh and matters of practices, in this matter each and every individual has an obligation to research themselves and find out. Not for anybody else, for my own self, so that I know that when I believe in Allah, in the Prophet, in the Imams alayhi salam, what are the reasons why I believe? I cannot say that I believe in Allah and the Prophet and the Imams because my family believes in it, or because Mujtahid X believes in it. No, I have to know that for my own self. Okay, number 1. But in that matter, sometimes here people, misunderstand the issue. Just because I have to understand it myself and I'm not allowed to follow somebody doesn't mean I can make it up myself. I still have to believe in it based on what the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam have already taught and preached regarding beliefs. I cannot make up my beliefs as I go along. Okay, so regarding Tawheed, regarding the Sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regarding the Prophets, regarding the Ayyimah alayhi salam, we have to go based on the theology that exists from our fuqaha. We have to use those arguments. If somebody's got some alternative beliefs, alternative arguments, even then, now this is very important, we wouldn't agree with those beliefs, but even then we don't label that person, or we don't say that this person is, for example, X, Y and Z, and give them titles or so on and so forth and spread down social media. Why? Because that is going to ultimately hurt our own selves. it's going to hurt our own community. Whatever matters we have, whatever issues we have to deal with it in-house, not putting it on social media, not spreading it around on social media. This is a very dangerous trend that we have nowadays. Why? Because social media is accessible. Everybody's on social media. Whatever you want to share, you just put it on Facebook, or you send it on WhatsApp, or you send it on, whatever other medium you have, and you spread it around, and
that's how everything
is spread out. Okay, nowadays nobody reads any books, nobody listens to anything. They just all their source of knowledge is from social media, and clips are 2 to 3 minutes long. Okay, so so this person spoken for 1 hour, you took 3 minutes out of that and started spreading clips. Right. Now, regards to our established beliefs, how do we know where are the right, which is the right path, which is the right way? So in that regard, we still have to look towards our mujtahideen, our scholars, right? And how do they approach this particular area? We don't do taqleed in this matter of aqaid, but we still need to. Why the books regarding aqaid, regarding usul al-din, are also written by the same scholars, right? The same scholars have compiled the books regarding usul al-din as well. And we have to tally and find out and see who are the people who are following the line of the mujtahideen, of the maraji, and who are the people who are making up beliefs as they're going along.
At the end of the day, they haven't spent so many years in perfecting or trying to perfect themselves. They're only doing that to help us.
Absolutely.
And if we come and say, look, we don't even want to follow Maraja because we can do our own research.
Right.
Now,
if somebody thinks that they have the ability to do, to get the actual laws from Quran and Hadith, and they know all the, 15 subjects that you need to know in order to extrapolate laws from Quran and Hadith, then Bismillah, be my guest. But that means that if you make a mistake, then you're taking responsibility on your own self. On Day of Judgment, God will ask that, why did you try and do something that you are not capable of doing? If you're happy to take on that responsibility for yourself, then that's fine. Okay, that is absolutely fine. But if, like most of us, we have family, we have jobs, we have lives, we have things to do, we don't have time to devote the whole time to researching about the religion. So it makes sense, is rational thing.
Like you mentioned,
it's a rational thing.
You go to a doctor to diagnose the problem that you have. Why don't go to a jurist who's expert in that field?
Absolutely.
To diagnose your problem that you have.
Is a rational idea. Sayyid al-Khoi, Radwanullah Ta'ala alayhi, says that is a rational. Our belief is that is a rational belief. In order to find out the laws of Islam, to refer to somebody who is devoted their whole life to researching about Islam. If somebody spent 50 years researching about the religion of Islam in order to come up with a solution, then it makes sense to me that I'm going to refer to that person and get the answer from him, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel and do it when I haven't got that capability to do it in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense, and you would do that in every single area of life. Okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
Now, in terms of, like we said, we've got these differences of opinions, which are. Do
you know what? No,
yes.
I was going to mention actually, moving slightly away from Maraja.
Yes.
I think this is a bit of what I find quite. Sometimes us youth tend to follow the trends which are happening.
Yes.
We've mentioned this before, but I think because of the episode, it has to be mentioned again in a bit more detail, or a bit better explained. We have new scholars coming out, contemporary scholars coming up with contemporary theories. Some of the beliefs which these scholars may have, these Maulana, it may be not fundamental to what we have been grown up to believe. Us as youth, we like to sometimes go with the trend and what we see and what may be different to what's already there. We love to go to something which is completely different when we've been following something which is always been quite continuous. So when these Mulanas and these scholars are coming out with these theories, how do we ourselves make sure that we are following back to our roots and what it's good for us to get closer to God at the end of the day? And because as we're mentioning here, everyone's got their own opinions, but some opinions can be dangerous in how they can influence other people. Now, if a new scholar is coming out with a different theory and a youth has picked that theory up and it may not be in line with our fundamental beliefs, then that youth may go around exposing that that theory which may not even and it may just pass on, just like you said, social media, all it takes is one quote,
right,
10,000 retweets and it's
absolutely. So in terms of this, it is something that is a growing trend, something that obviously, like you said, people are attracted to things which are new or controversial or so on and so forth. The question we have to ask is that if something is an established belief, for example, then there's a reason why it's an established belief, okay? Right? So if we've got 100 scholars and 99 of them have a belief in a particular area, there's a reason why that's the case, because there's enough sufficient evidence from our sources for that particular belief, okay? If somebody challenges that belief, they better be prepared to bring evidence, okay? I'm not saying don't challenge the existing beliefs. By all means, challenge the beliefs, but make sure that you've got the evidence in order to justify that challenging of beliefs. If you don't, then you can't challenge existing beliefs without evidence, okay? If there's evidence, say there is evidence based on this, right? If there's no evidence, then we have to reject that belief and go with the belief which is
what about
established.
the youth who are being influenced?
Right. So this is the same thing. Whoever's being influenced has to ask themselves the same question, that is there enough evidence for this particular point? Or counter, is there, if you heard somebody, right? This is another issue that is very important to remember, that we shouldn't, when it comes to learning about the faith, we shouldn't rely on one person, okay? Because that one person, if that person has a bad intention, they could manipulate my ideas, beliefs, and make me think that this is the only way to follow. I should listen, try and learn from multiple people, right? Listen to everyone, no problem. And this Holy Quran tells us that the person who is the best is who listens to everybody and then picks the best out of all of them. Okay, so that means every believer has to have this capability to be able to distinguish what is the best out of all of them, right? So I'm not telling you, for example, that you have to believe the same beliefs as me. No. And what I'm saying to you is that whatever you believe, you better have evidence for what you believe. Why? Because I have evidence for what I believe. Okay, I believe this because I have evidence for this on Tawheed, on Adalat, on Nubuwwat, Imamat, Qiyamat, all of these things, I have evidence. Okay, now if you're going to bring something counter to that and say, no, in Tawheed you're supposed to believe this, or in Prophethood you need to believe this, or in Imamat you need to believe this, or on Day of Judgment there's something new, a new theory, by all means bring that theory. But be prepared to have evidence for that from Quran and from riwayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Other than why we have dangerous trend. People think that just because in other religions they read their holy books and come up with their own interpretations, people think you can read the Quran and come up with their own interpretations. No. We have clear ahadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Aimma alayhi wasallam that if you bring your own interpretation, your own theories about Holy Quran, you're going to go to hell. And there's no two ways about this. It's very clear. Okay, so I have to follow the interpretations of Holy Quran, which Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam have explained, espoused, and any interpretation which is consistent with that. If there's an interpretation from Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salam and there's some new theory which goes against that, I have to reject that without any shadow of doubt, that this interpretation which is going against the established beliefs according to the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam, riwayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam, we have to reject that. Okay, so for example, if somebody comes out and says that there's two gods, they reject that. The Quran clearly says God is one. Qul huwallahu ahad. If somebody comes out and says, for example, after the Holy Prophet ﷺ, there's another prophet, we have to reject that. Why? Because the Quran clearly says he's Khatamun Nabiyyin, there's no prophets after him. Okay? If somebody, for example, comes and says that the Prophet doesn't have this sifat or this sifat, we have to see, does the Holy Quran tally with that, confirm with that? What does the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt ﷺ say about this particular area, about the qualities that the Prophet needs to have? Same thing, what do the Imams need to have? Who can be the Imam? Do all those people who I believe in the Imam tally with all these conditions that the Imam has to have or not? If somebody comes out and says, no, this person, instead of this person is the Imam, is it possible that this person can be the Imam? Do they have all the conditions that the Imam needs to have? Okay, and what is the purpose and function of the Prophet, of the Imams? All of this is clearly mentioned in Holy Quran, Riwayat. If somebody comes and challenges these things, then they better have the evidence. If you have an ayat of Holy Quran, if you have a riwayat from Ahlul Bayt ﷺ regarding our beliefs, which says that this belief is not this, which we've held for this many years, but is this, that's fine. But you better have the evidence to show that this is why I am right on this particular area and all these people are wrong, right? It's not to say that just because we've had that opinion for 400 years or 600 years or 1200 years, that means it's necessarily right. No, it's not right because it's been there for 1200 years. It's right because it conforms with what our holy texts already say about this particular topic. If you got an alternative opinion, bring your evidence, compare the evidence, and we'll see.
Yeah. Now, we've spoke about Maraja, we've spoke about scholars who are coming out with theories. Us individuals us individuals ourselves want to sometimes express our own opinions and eagerly give our examples, and may interpret certain Islamic law which has been guided by our Maraja differently. That's also an issue. For example, the topic of music. I hear it all the time now that, oh listen, I can listen to some sort of music if it hasn't got any negative connotations behind it and the lyrics are good, we can still listen to it, so it should be fine. And music is just one. There's many things which you find a loophole and you manage to gain access and you just go by it. Now, should we impose our views on other people? And if we do, how do us as individuals recognize that we need to go back and actually see that this may actually be going against our
right. So if I've got an opinion and I share it, for example, with my family or my friends or so on and so forth, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with nothing wrong with having opinions. Islam is not saying you can't have opinions. There's nothing wrong with having those opinions. There's nothing wrong with sharing those. The issue comes, of course, is when my opinion goes against the established beliefs or practices, what the mujtahideen is saying, what the imams are saying. That's where we have a problem. Okay, that's one. Number two is when I'm trying to impose that on other people. Okay, so for example, if I'm saying that my mujtahid says this, or this is my opinion, okay, I'm entitled to have opinions. Islam is not saying you can't have opinions. No, but your opinion is not worth the same as the opinion of the Prophet, the Imams, of the person who's extrapolating laws from the source of Quran and Hadith. Okay, that is what I need to understand. That yes, if the Prophet says something, and the Quran tells us this, that if Allah and the Prophet have decided something, then it is not for the believers to bring their own opinions. Okay, so this is where we have to be clear. That if there's something clearly from Allah and the Prophet, then I can't go against that and say this is my opinion. Yeah, you can have your opinions, but it doesn't matter. There's no value of that opinion. Okay, that is what we need to understand. What's happened is, due to the prevalence of social media, we've begun to think that everybody's opinion has the same value, or if I've got 10,000 followers on social media, then somehow my opinion has become more valid.
Or if I have a degree.
Right? Or because I have a degree, or because I have, a friend circle, or because I'm influential, or because I have lots of money, my opinion is valuable. No. Your opinion is only acceptable if it's in line with what Allah and the Prophet and the Imams have taught. If it's not, then it doesn't have any value whatsoever. It doesn't matter how many followers you have on social media, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter about anything, right? Okay. Now, after all of this, like I'm saying, is that we're saying that there's differences of opinions, differences exist. That's also fine. Okay. We have to be able to deal with those differences in a way where our enemies do not use that against us. Okay. If we're going to put our differences on social media, then the people who are against us, okay, they will use that, and they are using that against us. Okay, so that we have to have the insight and the foresight to be able to know how to deal with differences. Okay, this is the important point. This is the reason why we brought this topic, that we have to know how to deal with difference. Okay,
you can't have Tom, Dick and Harry just create a YouTube channel, put loads of content on there, and then another for a different faith start that same thing up, and then it just becomes two different groups having arguments, opinions, which they have no academic knowledge of.
So we have to, number one, be respectful. Even if there's somebody who I vehemently disagree with, I still have to be respectful. That's number one. Okay, this is the akhlaq that's taught to me by the Holy Prophet ﷺ, with the Imam, that even the people who wanted to kill them, they still had good akhlaq, the good relations with them. Okay, they still did not use abusive language, for example. That is not befitting of a follower of Imam ﷺ to use abusive language, to use,
I think on that
wrong things. Yes,
befitting language, I think it was Imam Ali in one of his wars. He was fighting someone, and just before he was about to finish that person off, I think he spat him.
Spat in his face, yes.
And all of a sudden, Imam Ali says, "You know what? You're my friend now." He puts his sword away, then he goes, "I'm not going to finish you off." That is the level of akhlaq that we have against our difference of people.
So this is very important. That when this is about the enemy, and what we're talking about is people who share the same faith of us, right? Just have a difference of opinion. So how high should our level of disagreement be? That's one.
Absolutely.
Number two is, if I'm going to accuse somebody of something, we have the famous saying, when you point one finger at somebody, three fingers are pointing back at you. Okay, if I'm going to accuse something of someone, it's the same thing. I better have evidence against that person. If I don't, then that is ittiham, that is slander, and that's haram. Okay, so if I'm going on social media, even if I didn't write it, if I forwarded it, I'm also responsible. If I'm forwarding a message which says so and so is an agent, so and so is this, so and so is works for X, and so is doing this, and I'm sending that to somebody else, I'm responsible for that content because I forwarded it on to somebody else. Okay, unless I have proof 100% that this is the case. This is very important, right? Yes, I can have a difference of opinion. I don't have to agree with every single thing that this person says, but I'm not allowed to put false accusations on anyone that this person is an agent, or this person is working for this, or this person is an enemy of Islam or enemy of the Sharia. These are very serious allegations to make on anybody without proof, without evidence. And on social media, this happens every single day. Okay, so this is not the way. This is why I'm mentioning this. This is the wrong way of dealing with difference. You don't have to agree with me, but if you're going to accuse me of something, then you have to have the evidence, and you have to give that person who you're accusing a fair chance to defend themselves and say, no, you have you're misunderstanding about what I've done, or what I've said, or what, so on and so forth. This is what I mean. Okay, yes, if I'm a person who's coming to the public and I have to be careful about what I say, it's a two-way process, no doubt. If I'm irresponsible about what I say, if I'm irresponsible about how I speak, what I talk about, so on and so forth, then I'm also responsible, partly. But it is still not justified for another person to come out and say this person is, you know, an enemy of Islam, enemy of the Sharia, without any proof. It's very important. Okay, and we have to stick to the facts. We can't go, oh, this person told me this and this person. No. What are the facts? And what, you know, in terms of the difference, sometimes it turns out that the facts regarding the particular point are not even there. This person said something else, and this person misunderstood what the person was saying, and then built a whole story about that and did 100 accusations. It's haram to accuse a person, even a non-Muslim, let alone a believer, a Muslim, follower Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, about this person is this person is that, unless there's evidence, proof against that person.
Okay. I think this is the perfect time to conclude now. We've mentioned some really, really key points and how dangerous it can be in following an opinion which may not be in guidance to what our Maraja have put out, what the Quran says, and what our prophets and Imams have written out for us. Therefore, we should be conducting our own research, regardless from what our friends may say, which may not be in line with our religion, regardless of what new fundamental scholars, new theories which our scholars are bringing out. We need to go back, look into it, see whether it's in line with our current beliefs or whether it's going or just diverting us. The main importance is that we've emphasized in today's talk is that we must go back and do our own research. We must follow our Maraja, whether that be Ayatollah Sistani or Ayatollah Khamenei, whoever they are in that field, because they have more expertise, knowledge than us. We live in the West where we are occupied by our jobs, our careers, and these guys have dedicated their lives to only help us. And therefore, we'd like to end our show. Inshallah, do tune in for another show. And best of both worlds, 7 p.m. Friday evenings. Qadafis.